It's Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, an incurable chronic illness that attacks the body's central nervous system. About 25,000 Australians are currently living with the disease. Joining us now live to discuss this is the CEO of MS Research Australia, Dr. Matthew Miles. Dr. Miles, thank you for joining me. What changes in research are we seeing around multiple sclerosis at the moment?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of changes from a point where we were really trying to stop the disease, which in some people living with the most common form of MS, we call relapsing MS. For some people, that's now a reality, that their disease has been stopped because of these new therapies. What we're really going on to now is, how can we protect the neurological system? How can we protect that with potential new therapies? And also, how can we reverse some of those signs? Some of the damage that's been done because of multiple sclerosis, we now know that reversal is actually possible, and that might be part of, will be a big part of what we're doing with Stop and Reverse MS, where we're trying to make that become a reality within the next 10 years. So things have really moved on from a point where we're just trying to stop the symptoms, but one to where we're trying to actually repair some of the damage done.
Well, it's such a common disease, really. That's a remarkable figure, 25,000 people each year. Why is it so hard to figure out what causes multiple sclerosis?
It's a complex disease. It's a combination of both genetic and environmental causes, and that makes life difficult because, I think you want to be able to have one cause. It's easier if it's one bacteria or one virus or one genetic change. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury in MS. It's a complex interaction of both genetic and environmental factors, and they're all conspiring together, if you like, to then lead the body to attack itself. And that's what we call an autoimmune disease, when the body, for some reason, is challenged and tricked into attacking itself. So MS is an autoimmune condition. As you mentioned, it's very common. It's the most commonly acquired neurological disease in young adults in the world. And our role as MS Research Australia is to try and stop that, try to not only prevent the disease, but to look for ways of better treatments and to ultimately cure MS. That's our focus.
And it's a remarkably expensive disease to treat as well. I think it's $1.7 billion that the Australian public pays each year for these treatments. What are some of the barriers to accessing the treatment that people suffering from MS experience?
Well, that $1.75 billion figure is actually both direct and indirect costs. So it's not just the costs of the treatments, it's the costs associated with loss of employment or other more indirect costs. But we are very, very lucky in this country that we have a very good pharmaceutical benefits scheme. We have 12 therapies on the market, on the PBS, for people living with relapsing MS. We have one for progressive MS, which isn't on the PBS, unfortunately, but is registered. And in America, there's 2 new therapies really registered this week or last week for secondary progressive MS, and we hope to see those in Australia by the end of the year, early next year. So it's important that they are registered for use for Australians. We have a lot more access to drugs than some other countries. We're probably one of the best in the world, maybe on par with some of the Scandinavian countries. So we do have wonderful access to treatment, and I think that's part of the reason why people living with MS in this country have seen such a change, is because they do have access to those treatments, and their doctor, their neurologist, can treat early and treat quite aggressively. And we've found through research that that's a very, very important thing to stopping MS and to stopping that progression and to stop disability. So it's important that those drugs are accessed by Australians living with MS.
Well, that's one good thing to hear, but I know you're looking for more money for research in particular. Can you tell me a bit about the 50K challenge and what that's hoping to achieve?
Sure. Well, Kiss Goodbye to MS is our fundraising campaign. It's a digital virtual campaign, and we've been running that for 7 years or so. It's the only campaign to ever have a global footprint. It's rolled out in more than 10 countries throughout the world. It was previously just you could do whatever you liked to raise money for MS, but this year we started an activation called the May 50K, which was to, you could either walk or run or do whatever you liked to complete 50 kilometres within the month of May, and a real fantastic fundraising activation. It's already raised $1.66 million. We have over 9,100 fundraisers, 26,000 donors to the campaign. And we want to hopefully get that figure to $2 million by the end of the month. So we don't have very long. It's very, very urgent. But the difference between where we are now to raising $2 million could be a couple of extra fellowships and research awards for our young, bright researchers who, you know, probably have the potential to have big breakthroughs. And if they don't get funded, that research just gets left on the shelf. So it's really urgent need for more funding into MS, given there's been so much momentum. I mean, why wouldn't you? There's been progress, so why wouldn't you continue and fund research that's showing great rewards for people living with the disease?
Oh, well, fantastic work so far, Dr. Miles, and I hope a few more people see this today and get on board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.